AITA for refusing to buy a second seat for my wife, even though it's causing tension in our relationship. I, 65M, have been married to my wife, 61F, for a long time. We have a loving and supportive relationship, and I can honestly say that I cherish her. Over the years, we've had our fair share of ups and downs, but we've always made it through. We share everything, from our dreams to our struggles, and have managed to create a life together that I am really proud of. She's a beautiful woman, inside and out, and I love her deeply, even though she might not always see herself the way I see her. That being said, there's something I've been struggling with for a long time now, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable or if I'm simply trying to do what's best for both of us. This has to do with my wife's health, her weight, and a specific situation that's been causing a lot of tension between us recently. I really need some perspective on this, so I'm turning to the Reddit community for some advice. To give you a bit of context, my wife has been struggling with her weight for years. It's something she has always known and been aware of, but it's also something she hasn't really tackled seriously. I've always tried to be understanding and patient with her, and I've never judged her for her body. I love her regardless of how much she weighs. That being said, her weight has led to some serious health problems, and I'm starting to feel like it's getting to a point where it's hard to ignore the consequences of not taking it seriously. She has high blood pressure, she's pre-diabetic, and her blood work results are terrible. Her liver function is not great either, and it seems like everything is getting worse over time. As much as I've tried to support her, I'm not sure how to help her anymore. I've offered to cook healthier meals, I've tried to encourage her to get more exercise, and I've done everything I can think of to support her in a way that isn't pushing her too hard. But despite everything, she's not really trying to make the necessary changes to improve her health. She talks about wanting to lose weight, but she hasn't taken any meaningful steps toward doing so, and that's really frustrating for me. I've never told her that she needs to lose weight, and I've never criticized her about it. I've always tried to be patient and understanding, knowing that these kinds of things are difficult to deal with. But at the same time, I can't pretend that it's not having a big impact on both her health and our relationship. I love her, and I want her to be healthy. I want us both to have many more years together, but it's getting harder and harder to ignore the reality of the situation. Now, here's where the real problem comes in. We have a trip planned for May. It's for her nephew's graduation in Virginia. We've been talking about this trip for a while, and we're both excited to go. However, there's one big issue that has been looming over the entire planning process: the flight. We've booked everything else: the hotel, the rental car, the itinerary, but we haven't booked the flight yet. And I'm starting to get really anxious about it because of my wife's refusal to consider purchasing a second seat on the plane. Let me explain. About a year ago, when we were first starting to think about booking the flight, I brought up the possibility that we might need to purchase a second seat for her. I didn't bring it up in a judgmental way at all. I didn't want to make her feel bad, and I didn't want to cause any stress. But the reality is that we've been on flights before where it's been uncomfortable for her. She's a larger woman, and sometimes it's difficult to fit in the seat, especially on longer flights. So I brought it up as a way to avoid any potential embarrassment or discomfort. I thought that by discussing it early, we could figure out how to handle it without making it an issue later. When I mentioned the idea of buying a second seat, she immediately shot it down. She said, "I won't do it. I'm not buying a second seat, and if they force me to, I just won't go on the trip." This was the first time we'd really talked about it seriously, and I was honestly taken aback by how firmly she felt about it. I wasn't expecting such a strong reaction. I tried to explain to her that it wasn't about judging her or making her feel bad. It was just about making sure she was comfortable during the flight. But she wasn't hearing it. She told me she wouldn't even consider the idea, and that if we had to buy another seat, she wouldn't go on the trip at all. At first, I let it go. I didn't want to push the issue, and I figured we'd revisit it later when the time came to actually book the flight. But now, with the trip just a few weeks away, I'm starting to feel a lot of anxiety about the situation. My wife is still completely against buying the second seat, and I can't help but feel like I'm stuck. I don't want to go on the trip alone, but I also don't want to enable her by just letting this slide. The reality is that this isn't a new issue. We've known about her weight for a long time, and we've known that flying can be uncomfortable for her because of it. We've even had situations in the past where she's had trouble fitting in airline seats, and I've had to ask for seatbelt extenders. I know this is a sensitive topic for her, but I also know it's something that needs to be addressed. If we want to go on this trip and enjoy it, we need to be realistic about the situation. I'm trying to be supportive, but I also don't want to ignore the reality that this situation is impacting our plans. I don't want to feel like I'm enabling her to avoid dealing with the consequences of her health decisions. I've tried to gently encourage her to take action before, but nothing has changed. I'm beginning to feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. I want to go on this trip with her, but I don't want it to be uncomfortable or stressful for either of us. My friends have told me that I should just buy the second seat and get it over with. They say it will make the trip easier and less stressful, and that it's just a practical solution. But I can't shake the feeling that by doing so, I'm just enabling her to avoid facing the reality of her health and weight. I feel like if I buy the seat for her, I'm not helping her take responsibility for her own health. On the other hand, I don't want to ruin the trip for both of us. I want us to be able to go to celebrate her nephew's graduation and to enjoy the time together. I don't want this situation to become a source of tension between us. But at the same time, I feel like we've been dancing around this issue for so long, and I'm starting to feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I don't know if I should just bite the bullet and buy the second seat, or if I should hold my ground and refuse to go if she won't make this change. I'm at a crossroads here, and I'm really unsure what to do. I want to be a good husband and support her, but I also need to be honest with myself about the impact of her refusal to deal with this issue. I don't want to enable her, but I also don't want to cause unnecessary conflict. I just don't know if I'm being unreasonable for wanting to make sure the flight is comfortable for both of us. So, AITA for not wanting to buy a second seat for my wife. Or should I just buy it and move on to avoid any drama?